Summer school again. We are talking Michigan. You see the logo on the screen. You see that man, Sam Webb, the Michigan Insider. I mean, just the absolute best Michigan coverage anywhere. Sam, welcome back to the show, man.
Hey man, I gotta tell you, last year's summer school, I heard about it all year. I heard about it. People were like, "Hey, did you talk about Mikey St. Risto?" People pay attention. People are looking at it like, "Hey, you guys know what you're talking about." So you do a great job with
I, I,
the whole deal.
I mean, I tell you what, I don't think there was a more accurate state, and I know Michigan fans will not want to be lumped in with Michigan State, but but between you and Brooks, I don't think we had two guys give more accurate predictions. Right now, you didn't catch hell for it like he did, but like
Really.
that was that was a
That means
really
a lot
really
coming
good
from Bud
state.
Elliot, man. I mean, because I know you talk to the whole network. So if you're saying we were the most accurate, man, that carries weight with me.
As you're one of the reasons why I actually came over 24/7. It's like, look, man, we always see each other at recruiting camps before back when I was destination. Man, he just got studs all over the place. It's a good place to be.
Yes,
Uh,
sir. Yes, sir.
all right, so Michigan last year, 13-1, pretty consensus third in all the power ratings. Extremely good football team. I'm a big Tampa Bay Rays fan. I got to know, like, maybe you can't say it on the show, but do they have some kind of secret sauce for player development? Because this feels like everybody they take, they're hitting like the 90th percentile outcome of what that prospect could turn into. Like, what are they doing behind the scenes
Yeah,
that is working with this player dev?
yeah. I think they have the best strength coach in all of college football, and Ben Herbert. I mean, it's the one contribution that Dan Enos made. So Dan Enos was a Michigan assistant for like 2 seconds, right? Before he went to Alabama. But while he was in town, Michigan was looking for a strength coach, and he was coming from Arkansas, and so he mentioned Ben Herbert's name, and he's been a revelation for Michigan as far as their player development is concerned. I mean, perfect example is DJ Turner. DJ Turner, who blazed the 40 at the combine, what ran like a 4.26, 4.27. Well, if you go back and look at his 24/7 profile, one of those combines, I think he ran like a 4.67. And he had this lingering glute issue that it hampered him all through the latter stages of high school career, hampered him earlier in his Michigan career, and Ben Herbert was part of fixing that. And so a guy who ran a 4.67 verified time winds up running a 4.27. I mean, that doesn't just happen, right? Something got fixed, and this soft tissue issue that he was having, Ben Herbert helped fix it. And that's just one of the more vivid examples of the great player development that he's been a part of at Michigan.
The offense last year, Bill Connolly, my friend, his power ratings had him top 15. I was actually chatting with Bill right before we pressed play here, and I was kind of bouncing some stats off him. And I'll go to you with this one. Like, this offense, elite rushing game, good overall passing, and like, I don't know how long we need to spend on this show establishing Michigan's going to be very, very good. Like, I think the real question is, like, can they go from like elite to like super elite? And the one area that I see that they can improve in is drop back passing. So I'll hit you with this stat. Number one in the country in passer rating off play action, 55th in the country passer rating without play action. Like, how can this, which, I think we see when they get behind the chains at times. If Ohio, if they don't manage to pop a guy wide open at times, like that, they can stall a little bit. How can they get better in the drop back passing game? I know it's not all McCarthy, but I really want your take. Like, where do you see them improving in this area?
Yeah, so I think you have to realize I'd be interested to see the splits
Yeah.
between the first half of the season and the second half of the season. So JJ McCarthy was hurt last spring. Last spring and summer, he didn't even work out with the team. It was rehab the whole time. He really didn't get back into it until fall camp. So no time to work with the receivers, no time to work with his mechanics. The first half of the season was basically him calibrating. Definitely, we talked about him being really from in a play action capacity, really dialed in.
Yeah.
I think that it's about two things. I think it's about repetition, because what they emphasized earlier in the season, I wasn't enough reps to really improve him at the rate that I think that I think a lot of people wanted to see at the time. By the time he got to the end of the season, he was fine. The other thing, mechanics. So I do a breakdown. I do breakdowns every week with Devin Gardner, former Michigan quarterback, Al Borges, offensive coordinator at Michigan, at Auburn, at Oregon. He's offensive coordinator, UCLA, all over the place. And they both would just harp on his mechanics all the time. Like, repeat your mechanics the same way all the time. And they would point out how that wasn't always the case with JJ. I think that's going to be different this year, Bud. I think this new quarterback coach they have, Kurt Campbell, is a revelation for him. I mean, there's a reason that when it came time to find a new quarterback coach, JJ McCarthy was standing on the table for this guy. And I think he is a quarterback coach. He's not just a X's and O's guy. The mechanics of the position, the fundamentals of the position will be drilled, will be emphasized. And I think that's going to be another piece that really helps JJ's game become more consistent, whether it's play action or just pure drop back.
There's just so few weaknesses with this team. If they get that cleaned up, I mean, it really becomes an even scarier operation there. Speaking of Devin Gardner, is he working out with the strength coach too? Because that dude is jack. I saw him out there to lead 11.
Man, don't blow that dude's head. Don't blow his head up, bud. He already thinks he's the best thing going. Really
all right,
do it.
That's fair. That's fair. Running back. I got a little flack on Twitter for saying that I thought Penn State might be the best in the Big Ten of the room, and this is your chance for all the Michigan fans out there, assuming you believe it. That tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why this is the best running back duo in the country.
Well, I think Blake Corum was on his way to being the Heisman Trophy winner last year. Unfortunate injury versus Illinois. I wonder if that game is as close if he doesn't get hurt. And then Donovan Edwards. I mean, people don't know. You see the hand injury at the end of the season. He played all year with the patella injury that was debilitating at times. I mean, it had him sitting out, minutes, quarters, games. I mean, it just was something he had to have surgically repaired. He was able to play with it later in the season without it really bothering him as much, obviously, as his hand. My point is, you had him not playing at 100% last year. And look what he did. Tremendous receiver out of the backfield. You saw his vision, his speed, his burst. I think the play of the season wasn't even the two runs he had against Ohio State. You look at the Big Ten championship game, this guy takes a split zone. He sees 5 yards play side. He cuts it back and beats 6 defenders on his way to the end zone. That's special talent in addition to his ability to be a plus receiver. That's, people like Jahmyr Gibbs. He was number 12 pick, I think, by the Lions. I think that this guy, Donovan Edwards, has all of that in his game. And I think we're going to see that on display this year. And then with Blake, I mean, look at the jump Blake made last year, not just with his ability to run through contact, his ability to run the daylight, but he also showed you his ability to catch the football as well. I thought we saw him in the screen game really show up some as well. So really, really versatile, really complimentary. And I think guys that can basically do whatever you need them to do. Both of them can run between the tackles. Both of them can run outside. Both of them can catch the football. I just don't know that you have another tandem that is as good in all phases of the game as those guys are. And they block too.
Sam, you know who else really likes Donovan Edwards?
Who's that?
Me. Check this out. So last year, and this didn't win, obviously. I actually bet him at 200-1 to win the Heisman. I did not think Blake Corum was going to make the jump he did, but I was like, you know what? This kid's got some juice. I had talked to Alan True about him. I was like, look, I mean, if he gets to be the starter somehow early enough, like he could win the Heisman. I mean,
they're going to run the football enough to feed both guys. One of the real measures for Michigan, though, will be, can they be more balanced?
Yeah.
From start to finish. I'm talking about from the start of the season to the finish. I mean, if you look at earlier in the season, I mean, they beat the hell out of that run game. Yeah, they threw it, but where did they throw it? They just didn't push the football down the field a whole lot. Then you got to the end of the season, and I think that's the question. Are we going to see the Michigan team that showed you the ability to light it up through the air at the end of the season? I think we will. I think we're going to see more balance this year, if for no other reason than JJ McCarthy has really, I know we'll probably end up talking about him, I think he is really more comfortable in his own skin as the guy now that he has a season of being the guy under his belt.
There's a situational thing here too, if you think about it. Michigan, obviously, I know some people had canceled games against them, so like it's not necessarily all their fault. But the non-conference is not crazy challenging, so you're going to get, for the most part, all the non-con teams are going to load up against the run. Most of your teams in the conference are going to load up against the run. There's not a lot of opportunities in game where teams are playing pass against the Wolverines. So like that's something they have to keep repping in practice a lot more in case you get down in a game, like 2-3 scores, and you have to, mount a comeback where the run game can't be quite as much of a factor, I guess, due to the clock. It definitely something to watch there. So normally on that, when an offensive line loses a consensus All-American plus Ryan Hayes, I'd be like, okay, how big is the drop off here? But am I wrong to assume that they might be just fine? If maybe
Yeah, you're not.
like Mike could be even a little better potentially.
It's hard to say that they'll be better without Olu Oluwatimi, but even when you consider that Trente Jones, uh, he missed half the season at least, and he was the most athletic lineman they had, and he's back, right? And then you throw in Zach Zenner, who could have easily gone to the NFL. Same thing with Trevor Keegan. You expect for those guys to take their game up a notch. So really, you're talking about replacing just those two guys, replacing your center. And so there's some guys that have done really, really well behind the scenes. Both Raheem Anderson and Greg Crippen, two young guys they recruited as centers. I thought, and Raheem for sure, I thought had a fantastic spring, and I know that Crip did well also. But then Michigan goes out and they go to the portal and get Drake Nugent, a multi-year starter from Stanford, and so here now you have unbelievable competition at the position. So you just feel like, people say Drake Nugent's going to be the guy, and I wouldn't argue with him being the favorite. I just know whoever wins that spot is a hell of a football player because they will have beaten out some big time football players. And then when you look outside, you think about how a couple of years ago, Chris Hinton was a 5-star lineman that a lot of people were saying, yeah, he's a good defensive lineman. We think he'd be a better offensive lineman. Well, his brother Miles is an offensive lineman from the jump.
Yeah.
And so you go and get him, another guy who has been a starter at the Power 5 level, a guy who is physical, a guy who has the pedigree. His dad was an all-pro in the NFL. You have the recipe to go out there and not miss a beat. Again, I can't say that they're necessarily going to be better, but if they aren't the same, I can't imagine the fall off being very steep.
I think I watched about 7 Michigan games last year, right? Which is not as many as y'all, probably not as many as some of the folks watching this, which is why I love having everybody on, right? Like bring the experts on. And when I looked at the stats at the end of the year, I did not realize that Ronnie Bell had more targets than the next two guys combined. Like, I think Ronnie Bell is a good football player.
Right.
But like 100 targets going to Ronnie Bell. You got to tell me like somebody's ready to step up and be a big time receiver. He went 7th round, right? Which is not bad, but
that's a great point, but it's a terrific point. I think it's in part a byproduct of what we talk. First of all, Ronnie is a really good player.
Yeah.
Ronnie was an alpha. Ronnie was a security blanket. You knew Ronnie was going to get open. You knew if it was a contested catch, Ronnie was going to most of the time come down with it or break it up. He was just a really, really reliable guy. But you are talking about a situation with a quarterback who didn't have the offseason to really establish chemistry across the board with all the guys. So it was always a work in progress as the season went along. And so it's not a surprise then that the guy that you had the greatest comfort with already established was the guy that you went to the most. I think this year the ball is going to be spread around a lot more. Cornelius Johnson busted out at the end of last season. I think he picked up where he left off in spring ball. And so they think he's going to be a vertical threat like he was in that Ohio State game. Roman Wilson is the fastest receiver or one of the fastest players on the team. And I just felt like he was a guy that needed more targets. And I think they feel like he's a guy that needs more targets. I think, and then the tight ends are always going to be able to play Colston Loveland. I just think that they're.
I was going to ask you on Loveland. I mean, some guys I know who are pretty good, like college fantasy players. They love Loveland, and is he kind of like the next up dude for sure there?
There's no question. There's
Okay.
no question. I mean, you watch he can get open. He can do, uh, it's 50-50 balls. He can run by you. He's not a blazer, but he can run by you like he did in the Ohio State game. The biggest stretch for him has been as blocker. But the pass catching piece of it, I mean, he was a receiver that converted to tight end in high school, right? So that never left him being that pure receiver. And you see it while he's out there playing. My point in mentioning all these guys is now they have some things on wax. And so one of the things you heard, or I heard Jim Harbaugh say is everyone has to eat. We got to feed all these mouths, right? So he knows that it's not enough to target one guy 100 times. They're going to make it a concerted effort to allow for the ball to be spread around, right? And so a lot of times defense is going to dictate where you go with the football. But I think there are going to be more opportunities for other guys to be the number one option on a pass play. And I think that's going to result in a greater spread as far as the targets go. So looking forward to that. And it's just JJ having more comfort with the guys from the standpoint of being able to work with all of them for a full off season. I think you're going to see the dividends of that be reaped during the year.
He's a guy who for JJ. I mean, I know like we're gonna harp on a lot because he's a quarterback, but you think about it, like moved high schools due to the COVID stuff. Didn't get to be the full time starter to start the year because they were swapping in and out. Like you said, coming off the injury. Sometimes I think we assume we know what players are, and I think we can kind of know what his floor is, but his ceiling to me, just listening to you talk, definitely seems seems TBD. But there's some potential for helium there.
Yeah,
sure.
his body, he's in the best shape he's ever been. He needed to get bigger, stronger, especially if they're going to be running them, right? And I think you're going to see them. They're going to run him. He's such a threat. I mean, the dude is a legit 4-5 guy. I don't know if that's well known. JJ McCarthy can run, can really run, but terrific arm as well. And so it took him a minute though to get that back on track after missing the whole offseason with that shoulder. And so once you get past all of that, though, once you get past the shoulder injury and the health factor, now it becomes an issue of or a question of what I talked about before: mechanics, fundamentals, same technique and fundamentals every single time. And I think that's going to be a deal. Look, when they describe it, I talked to people in JJ circle, and they said, they got a quarterback coach, right? They got a quarterback. No, they got a quarterback guy. And sometimes you got to read between the lines.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what that said to me is you got a guy who is very tuned into, very dialed into that part of it. I'll give you a perfect example. Perfect example was in that Fiesta Bowl game. So JJ throws an interception that winds up being a pick six.
The out to the wide side of the field?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
He was just late with the throw.
Yeah.
Why was he late with the throw? Hitch step. He threw up a hitch step instead of a plant throw. Our guys both right away, Devin Gardner and Al Borges both pointed out. They said, man, that's all mechanics. He went the right place with the football. It wasn't a misread.
You can't hitch that. Yeah.
Can't hitch that. Exactly. You just can't hitch that. That's the kind of thing that I don't think you'll see JJ do this year. Like those kinds of things will be drilled out of him. And you take those mechanical things out of the equation, sky's the limit for him. And I think he knows between the work that he puts in on his own, because no one works harder than JJ McCarthy. And now the tutelage, the coaching that he'll get from Kirk Campbell, I don't think I have zero doubt that you're going to see a more mechanically sound quarterback this season.
And that's really something. I mean, putting a hitch on that throw is not necessarily a delivery thing. Like it's not like something in your motion that's jacked, right? It's like we have Danny Cannell who played for the Giants and Broncos and whatnot, and he kind of said the same thing. It's like I kind of doubt Michigan teaches him to hitch that at the bottom of his drop, right? Like, probably not.
No.
Yeah,
but how much of an emphasis is that? How much of an issue is made of that? is the
Yeah.
question. My point is, I think a whole hell of a lot of an issue would be made of that with Kirk Campbell as the quarterback coach. And I think that's why JJ loves him so much. Like the dude hasn't coached the game, and JJ is like, oh, he's like, hallelujah.
Yeah.
I got Coach Campbell, right? So, I mean, you know, you can make too much of some hires. It's easy to do when games aren't being played, but when you have a guy as talented as JJ, and now he has experience under his belt, and if he is convinced that this guy is making me better, like he was telling recruits, he told Jaden Davis, he said, "Man, I've worked with the guy for a spring, and I'm better. He's made me better in just a spring." That resonates with me.
Let's talk defense a little bit. Legitimate top 10 defense last year, just solid everywhere, stingy as heck, good impact players at basically every level. Up front, though, I mean, I thought Mozzie Smith was really good, and obviously, the NFL. It's not like a bold take by me. He went he went first round or early second, yeah. And they lose Mike Morris, who turned out to be a much better player than I thought he would be. Like that's in my mind, like player dev, he's much quicker at Michigan than he was in high school. In high school, I saw that kid and was like, man, the way he's growing, the way his body's developing, kind of maybe he turns into like an O tackle if he keeps blowing up, right? And like they got him, and I thought he was much quicker for them. But neither of those guys were like elite level pass rushers. I'm assuming this front will look different. Is there a drop off here, or is it just a different style of front?
So I think they'll be better. So
Better. Okay.
yes, they'll be better as a pass rushing unit. So Mozzie was a force in the middle, an anchor in the middle of the defense. Pass rush wasn't necessarily his forte. I think that might be something that he adds more to his game in the NFL. But Chris Jenkins, I talked to several NFL scouts before last season, and there's one scout that I talk to every year on a yearly basis, and he'll go over all the guys they have on their board, right, and ask me. And so they had Chris Jenkins on the draft board last year. Like, so before last season, heading into last year's draft, they had Chris Jenkins on the board. And so he comes and he has a really good season. My point in mentioning him is everyone talks like this dude is ready to explode. As a pass rusher, he's played the run well, despite being a guy who isn't Mozzie Smith, size. Just super strong at the point placement, great leverage. His dad was Chris Jenkins, played with the Jets back in the day, right? But his
Oh
dad
yeah,
was a lot
and the
bigger.
Panthers too,
Yeah, his
right?
dad was and the Panthers too. His dad
Okay.
was a lot bigger. His dad was like 3 foot,
Yeah.
a lot bigger than Chris, right? But he took something from that to be a guy who's 300 pounds, maybe. Just plays much bigger than that when it comes to his strength at the point. But his quickness off the snap and his ability to get upfield, I think, is just different than what we saw from Mozzie. And I think that'll show up. And then on the outside, man, a guy who injuries, and being a little bit behind on the depth chart, you only saw flashes of what he could do. But I look at Braden McGregor and look at him in the Ohio State game. Rush the passer, drop in the coverage, break up pass plays, get heat in the backfield. Now he's healthy. That's the big deal. He looks like Aiden Hutchinson in the face. He's same size as Aiden Hutchinson. He was a lacrosse and football player like Aiden Hutchinson. He's not Aiden. I don't think that he's as twitchy as Aiden. I don't think that he is as laterally quick as Aiden. But my point in making the comparison is I think his strength off the edge is similar, and I think his versatility when it comes to being able to play off the ball, like we saw with Mike Morris. You said you were a little bit surprised. I actually think that this guy is a little more fluid
Hmm.
than Mike Morris, which is why I think they're poised to have better production at that position. And Mike Morris had a good season last year.
He definitely did. Linebacker, I have no questions. They look loaded, and they add Ernest Hausman, right? Am I reading this wrong? Like this is one of the better linebacker groups in the country?
So it is, I think, talent wise,
Okay.
Junior Colson is, he's first round draft pick material. I think that I think that Jim Harbaugh saw an opportunity with Chris Partridge out there to go and maybe take the position to another level. I think that in the Fiesta Bowl, that was the position, the spot on the field that TCU took the greatest advantage of was the linebacking core. Whether it was alignment or kind of fooling them at times and getting them out of position. You just saw them really put the linebackers in that game, Michigan linebackers in that game. I think it was a learning experience for those guys. And they were depth challenged as well. I think now you look at them, you add an Ernest Hausman to the fold, who was a beast for Nebraska last year, and you put him next to a more experienced Junior Colson, who has the Chris Partridge coaching him. You like the guys they have on the outside, a guy like a Jalen Harrell, for instance, who we saw make some big plays in the Ohio State game. I just think you look around and you see the experience they have at the position, along with the athletic talent. Jimmy Rolder showed you some signs last year. You got Mike Barrett back, who is a really good coverage guy. I just think the versatility and depth they have at the position is greater. And now you throw Chris Partridge in the fold. And I think if you ask Jim Harbaugh, he feels like that position is poised to take a leap up.
So in the secondary, Rod Moore's back. Page is back. Sandstrill, the guy that you told everybody about last year, who ended up being extremely correct on, is back. And Will Johnson's back, who I'm going to assume is going to take a big step forward. Like guy played well, very well for a freshman. But DJ Turner and Jamon Green are gone, and those guys were pretty good football players. What's the level of concern here, if any, about replacing two good corners?
I think they feel good about the competition.
Okay.
So you got options if you're Steve Clinkscale, right? So you got Will at one spot, but at the other spot you're working with a few different working through a few different guys. Jay McBurrows, who you might remember from St. Thomas Aquinas down there in Florida, right? Last year was his first year back from ACL injury. I think they like his coverage ability, his ability to hit. Not the biggest guy. The guy that brings the size, the speed, the athletic freak talent is Amorion Walker. A guy who Michigan flipped from Notre Dame back during his recruitment as a receiver. But he is, when I say he is freaky, he is freaky. He is 4'3" in the 40. He is a blazing shuttle. He is a 40-plus inch vertical, and he's 6'3", 6'4". So he's 6'3", 6'4", and can bend, can change direction. And fluid, but he is still learning the position. So those two are in competition, right? What do you do if neither of those guys are ready? Michigan went out and got Josh Wallace from UMass in the portal. And you look at all the schools that came after. He's a 4-year starter. He's a captain, 2-time captain at UMass. Penn State wanted him. Iowa came through. There were a lot of schools that came through. Virginia Tech came through as well. He ultimately, Oklahoma came through with an offer. He landed on Michigan. And I talked to one of the UMass coaches that I know really well. He said, man, he has a lot of David Long in him. He's not as fast as David Long. David Long was a 4'3", 4'4" guy. This is more like a 4'5" guy, but he's 6'1", basketball player in high school, played with Hunter Dickinson, so he could jump, physical. I think they feel really, really good about that. If none of that worked, if you didn't feel like Josh Wallace knew the defense well enough and you didn't feel like Jaden McBurrows or Marion Walker were really ready for prime time, got to go back to my guy, Bud, the one I told you about last year. I think they feel very comfortable playing Mike St. Ristel at corner. You got a few different options at nickel. Jaden McBurrows can play nickel. You go around. They got a few different guys. You with all the safeties you have. Rod Moore can play nickel. You got a few different options that you can slide in that spot. So I think their ace in the hole, their Swiss Army knife, if you will, is Mikey St. Ristel. I just don't think it'll come to that. I think between Josh Wallace, Jay McBurrows, and Amarion Walker, one of those guys will be ready to really step up and take that position.
Got to ask you a little bit about the kicking game. So they lose Jake Moody, who was an absolute stud for them last year. James Turner, as an ACC guy myself, I know is really, really good. They get him in the portal from Louisville. I thought Moody's kickoffs were even better than his place kicking, and I don't think did Turner do kickoffs for Louisville? If so, like, is he going to be the kickoff guy? Because like what Moody did in kickoffs was really special.
I guess how about this? You're a guy not covering Michigan on a weekly basis who paid more attention to the efficacy of kickoffs than I did. I guess I would say his ability as a place kicker was definitely. I mean, we called the man Money Moody.
I mean, Sam, 66% touchbacks, 17% of his kicks inside the 25. So even when he hit it, or like even when it was returned, I mean, it routinely getting tackled inside the 25, like, and basically didn't hit any. Did they have any that came out long last year? None on my sheet.
No.
I mean, that's nails. Like that thing adds up, especially when you're kicking off 5, 6, 7 times a game.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I guess I didn't pay as much attention to that as watching Money Moody. I mean, there's a reason why you spend a high draft pick on that guy.
Yeah. Right? Oh, he's a stud in both. I mean, like, what was he not? So he was perfect from under 40 yards, and I mean, hitting 2/3 of his ones that are 45 plus. That's pretty good.
Yeah. So no, he's
and it's some weather.
And man,
sure.
Look, I mean, this is the one spot where it's hard for me to say they're going to be as good or better. I think there's going to be a drop off there. I could be wrong. But I don't think I'm going to be. I think that Jake Moody was special, man, and you just added something to how special he was, because I guess I wouldn't have talked about his touchbacks as much as I should have. But the place kicking part of it, we're gonna have to wait and really see. I mean, you got a freshman coming in, and give me a second. Freshman coming in.
We can come back to if you want. I mean, Turner's a hell of a get in the transfer portal.
Samaha. So I edit that. Okay. Adam Samaha is going to come in and really compete for that. He was a guy, one of the top kickers in the country. So he's going to compete for that job, and I wouldn't rule Adam Samaha out as being the guy. It's just you worry about it with him as a freshman. I think that's why Michigan went out and got some insurance. But if they have their druthers, his leg, I mean, there's a reason why Alabama was chasing him too. He ultimately landed on Michigan, stayed home right here from Ann Arbor, Huron. So I think Adam I think he's the best leg they have. But time will tell. He's a freshman. I mean, will he be ready for prime time? That's the question.
Michigan last year, in some ways, treated those opening games as a bit of like an NFL team might, treat the preseason, with the rotating of quarterbacks and trying different guys in different spots. Sam, this year, with respect to pass defense, they might have 9 weeks to try out different things.
Right.
Look, like they're going to face somewhere between very poor to, in the absolute best case, probably average passing game. East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, Rutgers, Nebraska, Minnesota, Indiana, Michigan State, and Michigan State lost, a third rounder to the NFL, and a guy that Florida State thinks could be a first rounder in Keon Coleman, and their quarterback to Auburn, and then Purdue, and then they got to go look at Penn State, at Maryland, Ohio State. Like the 3 best passing games by far, I think, on this list are those final 3 weeks. Like those first 10 weeks, they need to be figuring out everything they possibly can and repping a lot of pass game in practice.
Yeah, hey man, listen, it gives you an opportunity to work through some inexperience in one phase of your defense, finding that other corner. This gives, the way the schedule lays out, you're really able to carry that competition well into the season, and you gotta love it. I mean, if I don't know if you knew it was going to play out this way ahead of time, but based on the way that it played, it couldn't be better. So this will give them an opportunity to find out who that other corner is and really build that depth. I actually think they'll be ready, because we're really only talking about that one corner. Rob Moore, I think, jumps to the NFL after the year. He is that good, right? Makari Page is a breakout season for him. I think if you look at R.J. Shelton, his decision to transfer had a lot to do with Makari Page's emergence. You got Quentin Johnson, a safety who, once you got to the postseason, yeah, he was playing over RJ as well. So I think they're feeling that's another dude who could wind up factoring in a nickel too, by the way. So my point is you're only looking at one corner spot. And if you got 6 or 7 games to figure out who that is, I mean, that's a great opportunity to give every guy a real good look at if he's ready for the spot. And hopefully they're all ready for the spot and you just have an iron sharpen iron. But, I feel like one of those guys at least is really going to emerge and having an opportunity to go out there, make some mistakes and have it not cost you games, I think will be a great part of their development.
All right. We ask this question in every show. Other than quarterback, where's the spot when you're at practice or when you're talking to your sources, you're like, oh man, these backups, not that they suck, not that they'll never be good, but for this year, they're probably not it. So like this position group has got to stay healthy because these backups just aren't ready to be on that level.
This is easy. Quarterback, man.
No, other than quarterback, we know you can't lose. You can't lose a Heisman candidate. Come on, man.
So other than quarterback,
that's why it's tough.
Yeah, I guess I would go corner.
Okay.
I guess I would go corner because we're already talking about them trying to find a corner opposite Will Johnson. If Will Johnson were to go down, I mean, man, you have no proven corner on the roster. I mentioned you have a great patch, a great, kind of Swiss Army guy in Mikey Sainristil, but he hasn't played on an island yet. So, yeah, cornerback, man. I mean, you got other safeties who've played football. You got other linebackers who play football. Same thing on the defensive line. Offensive line is, I think, they may not have Olu Oluwatimi, but I think the offensive line could be deeper this year. The running back position, Benjamin Hall showed some flashes. CJ Stokes played last year. I think they'll feel better about the running backs after Blake and Donovan this year. Receivers, I think they have some guys who are ready to step up. Guys like Darius Clemens, for instance. So, hey, man, it's corner. It's corner. If Will Johnson were to go down, and he is back from an injury, that would be a real problem for them. The other guys will emerge. Like I said, they get Josh Wallace in as a transfer. I think there's a good chance he could maybe rise up and be the other guy, at least early in the season. But man, you are in a bad way if you're without a guy who is a potential All-American.
So I do the blue chip ratio. Michigan's obviously firmly in the blue chip ratio. The recruiting keeps getting better and better. And I'm kind of doing some kind of postscript analysis on some of these recent teams. And we found that the last 4 national champions averaged 7 first-round picks in their 2 deep, right? Now, eventual first-round picks, not necessarily all in it, but within the 2 deep. So like guys who were playing, they were averaging 7 first-round picks. I think Michigan probably is going to be close to that. Like, am I off base there thinking that they have like 7 guys in their 2 deep who are first round types?
No, I don't think you're off base. I look at Will that way. Chris Jenkins, I think could work his way up in there. JJ, of course, I think fits that mode. I think Donovan Edwards, who I know you really like, is another guy who fits that bill. That's just a few of them. And then I look at the guys who we haven't seen a lot, but they just have first round time. I just look at if it works out with a Marion Walker, you know who a Marion Walker is like physically?
Who?
Tariq Woolen.
Okay.
Tariq Woolen. I mean, spitting image of him physically. 6'4", can run like the wind, can change direction. We know he went to the league last year and set it on fire for the Seahawks, right? Out of UTSA.
Yeah.
And so this guy has those physical tools that you see with Tariq Woolen, you see in Marion Walker. Sands, of course, he's not 210 pounds yet. He's more like, 188, 189. So he has to get the weight on. He has to get the experience in the position just like Tariq Woolen did when he made the transition from wide receiver to corner. But if it works, Bud, this dude, he is a special physical talent. We just have to wait to see whether that special physical talent turns into being a comparable kind of football player. I actually think it will. Just got to get a young man some time.
Sam, I really appreciate all the time, man. This has been fantastic. And this is the last summer school we're recording of the year. I don't know if you guys see behind me, we got Penelope Bourbon up there. And this one is for Brian. He is an absolute huge fan of Sam Webb in Michigan. And Brian's wife, Brooke, who's also the sister of my buddy Brent, passed away last year of cancer. And they made an excellent F cancer bottle, which we were able to sample up there in Nashville, where he lives. And we, because 24/7 HQ in Nashville, we are up there quite often. And proud of my man. He just finished the 75 hard program and lost like 50 pounds, and is doing great, man. So, buddy, this one's for you. 70 episodes a lot. Sam, if you have not tried this is the barrel strength. So I don't know if I should be drinking 118 proof at 12 on a Tuesday, but hey, you know what?
Hey, it's the last one. You might as well, right?
We're 70 episodes down.
There we go. What you think?
Oh, that's dangerous for that proof. That's serious. Are you a bourbon guy?
Not really a bourbon. So I just had Charles Woodson's bourbon.
Oh, okay.
Last week. I'm not a real big bourbon guy, though. I'm more of a vodka guy.
I can get down with that too, man.
Matter of fact.
What we got?
So when you come to Ann Arbor, you got to try this. Arbor wheat.
Ooh.
Vodka. This is local.
Arbor. Okay, we'll do.
Yeah. So check this out. Made right here in Southeast Michigan. This is outstanding. So
awesome.
I haven't even cracked this bottle yet. I'm hiding this one at the office because at home, I mean, this winds up being the vodka that is used in all the mixed drinks. So keep this one here just for me.
Understood on that. Awesome, man.